Okay, hi everybody. So before I begin, I have both of the windows cracked to this room because it is, it's a little warm, but there's like a nice breeze out, and plus, I just wanted some air. But you're probably gonna hear. I know one of my neighbors is mowing the lawn. I'm telling you. I think in one of the other video, I think the last video I did, somebody was mowing. I think it was the other neighbor that was mowing the lawn. Now I think it's this one on the other side of us that's mowing their lawn. They're always mowing their lawns out here, which is good. My hair is a little bit of a mess. Anyway, so I thought that I would do a video that's a little bit different. A little bit different than stuff that I talk about on this channel. A little bit more personal than stuff that I talk about on this channel. And it's basically going to be just me talking about my experiences growing up with a single father. Now, the reason why I decided to do this is because there has been, for forever, you hear people talking about single mothers, single mothers, single mothers. So everybody's always talking about single mothers, all right? And because I'm kind of the product of the opposite condition, and you really don't hear about it like that, I figured I would talk about my experiences now. Fun fact, so my dad told me that when he got custody of my sister and I, that he was actually one of the first men in the state of New York to get custody of his daughters at that time. Okay, so that just goes to, that was a very long time ago. I ain't getting into how long ago it was. It was a long time ago. Okay, yeah. So the divorce, there was a divorce. The divorce was ugly. And again, you hear on here a lot about women leaving men, and people always bringing up statistics of how what the percentages of women that are getting divorced over men that are getting divorced, and who files for the divorce and whatnot. It wasn't like that in our situation. It was the other way around. My dad was the one that filed for the divorce. So my dad was the one that left, and my dad was the one that ended up with custody of my sister and I. So at first, when it first happened, I was living with my mom. And when things were first starting to when the divorce was first going through, and there was a first separation, and my sister was living with my dad. So my mother lived with my grandparents at the time. My grandparents had a house in Brooklyn. So it wasn't just my grandparents. There was other family members living in that house. And while I was living there, I'll just put it like this. There were certain things going on with me over there that were not safe. Okay. So my options were to stay in that situation at that time, at that age. I was about 7, 8 years old, or to go live with my dad. And my dad had his drug addictions, alcohol addictions at the time. So those were my options. Okay. And considering what was happening in the care of my mother, I was like, okay, I definitely can't stay here. So I went and I stood with my dad, or I asked to stay with my dad. And he ended up getting custody of both my sister and I. Would I redo it again? Yeah, probably. The options were really tough, but that was it. I really didn't have anywhere else to go. So those were my options at the time. And it wasn't like all bad. There was a lot of partying, when it came to my living with my dad. Lots of different people he used to invite over. So he had lots of male friends he would invite over. Male friends, female friends. He was dating. He left my mother for somebody else. So that relationship didn't work. And then he started dating other women. And those situations were kind of funny to watch. So those relationships didn't work either. And my mother remarried. So my mother ended up remarrying when my sister and I would, it was a few years, I would say, after my parents got, it was about, I would say about 3 years or so after my parents got divorced, my mother remarried to a white man. I don't know if I've ever brought him up. And they were married till he passed away. So the cool thing was I had, my biological dad, and then I also had a stepdad. And I used to really value that as a kid, especially growing up during the time that I did. You're talking about during the crack era. And everybody that I knew, for the most part, didn't know who their father was. And you're talking about either, whether it were, black or Latin kids, nobody knew their father for the most part. Some people did, but most people that I knew, most of my friends that I knew didn't. And I will say that, growing up with a single father versus growing up with a single mother, there are certain characteristics with people that I see, that I know off the bat. Like especially like on social media now, and I noticed it even when I was younger. There is like more of emotional outbursts, I would say. It's not to say that I don't have that and that I'm not guilty of that. I am not saying that, okay? I think we're all prone to emotional, outbursts, outrages, explosions occasionally. But I know I noticed that there is a difference when it comes to people who grew up with a single mother versus somebody like myself who grew up with a single father. I do feel like, because a lot of people always say that there's a certain energy with people that grew up with a single mother, and I do agree that there is a certain energy. And I feel like with me that I feel like guys that grew up with single mothers tend to have like a very emotional kind of feminine type energy, that they're always kind of getting loud, always kind of getting obnoxious, they're the first to really pop off or whatever. And I feel like I have more of a masculine energy. Hey, at least I admit it. At least I admit it. I'm not gonna be coming on here saying, I'm always in my femininity and I'm always, handling things, the way a feminine woman would, and kiss my ass, like I handle things the way that I handle things. And I think that was a lot of that is due to the way that I was raised. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else I can think of. So my dad always had different friends, different male friends coming over, and they would have, different girlfriends. Some of them had a different girlfriend every month, every couple of months, or every couple of weeks. They would have a different girlfriend, especially one of the guy friends that he had. Which, by the way, that very same guy friend, he actually ended up with a Black American woman, and he's been with her for I think he's been with her, I think even longer than my husband and I have been together. But before that, oh my God, every other week it was somebody else. Every other week it was some other chick coming to the house, and he would always bring them to the house, and then I would always have to meet them, and in some cases I'd have to entertain them. I mean, they were nice. They were all, nice ladies, young ladies at the time. That was a long time ago. Yeah, he ended up with, I don't know how he ended up with her, because he really lucked out, because she's too good. In my opinion, she's too good for him. He's one of those player types. So, but they've been together for a very long time. And he had other friends who are, to my knowledge, they're still single for the most part. And then there was family members that would come over that were into the same things that my dad was into the same drugs, into the same partying, into the same bullshit that my dad was into. But I'm saying all of that, but it's not like I have junkies in my family, because I don't. They're all professional people. Most, especially on my dad's side, I'm thinking, except for one uncle, I think everybody has at least a bachelor's degree or higher, and to my knowledge, I think they all have master's degrees. I think even one of them had their doctorates. One of my uncles actually passed away not that long ago, and I think he had his master's or he had his doctorate. I know that he used to he was a professor. So, could say all the crazy things that they were into. These were still professional people, right? Trying to think of what else. My dad was also a professional person too, so I'm not gonna get into like what he did for a living or anything like that. Because I don't know how personal that is. Even though my dad's been retired for a very long time now. But we are, I would say my sister and I are closer to him than we are to my mother. We do speak to our mother, not that much. We're not as close to our, and that's one thing I will say that if there's anything that I wish that I had, it would be a closer relationship with just having that maternal relationship. Because my sister ended up having to feel like she had to play the mother role for me because she's the older one. And that was hard. And I used to feel bad for my sister when it came to that. And in a way it forced, my sister to grow up quick. That environment forced both of us to grow up quick. I've done videos on like on boomers and stuff like that, and the reason why I have such feelings about stuff like that is because my parents are both boomers. They're both very Americanized. They're not your stereotypical foreign type parents that are going to be like, oh, I'm going to take care of my grandkids, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to watch them while you go do this, or while you go work. Or, that is not how my parents are at all. So for anybody that has that, you are very blessed. And I can say that now in this point of my life, that I look at it and I'm like, I think I'm genuinely jealous of that. I really do. My mother actually was here not that long ago because she wanted to, of course, I just had a baby and she wanted to see my son. So, she was here for, a good amount of days, and, she helped to the extent that she could for her ability, but there was just like that maternal part of her. I feel like with some points it wasn't there as much as I wanted it to be, and that was tough. But again, I think that for her own, let me fix this piece of hair, it's driving me crazy. I think that for her own, basically for who she is as a person, she did the best that she could, It's so weird to get so personal on this channel. Because I know that, one of the things that I'm never afraid to get that, like, to get, to talk about certain personal things. It's not even necessarily being afraid. It's just that I know that with people on here that can't stand me or whatever, like, they're gonna, like, there's people that just like to use whatever it is that you say against you, So they might use something, and that's, when I look at what it is that I'm talking about right now, this is the old me. This is my, these were my impressionable years. These were my young years. These were my childhood years. And there's people out there who will take that and use that to try to use it again. They'll say certain things to try to use your past against you, as if you are that same person. And it's like, that's a whole lifetime ago, So it's like, to an extent, these things did form who I am, and they did form who I've become as an adult. However, those were basically life lessons, and I guess things that, not that I'm the most religious person, but maybe these were things that God wanted me to go through, for whatever reason, and these were the things that had to be my life experience. I will say that this, and this is going to sound really weird too, because I'm always kind of making fun of, like, ghetto stuff, right? And I admit that I have my own ghetto, okay? Like, I've never denied that. But what I will say is that I think that my ghetto is very different than the single mother raised ghetto. It feels like single mother raised ghetto, there's like a certain formula that, I'm going to say, you guys, like anyone who's raised by a single. I'm just not shots at people who are who grew up with single mother households, because I can't imagine how hard it must be to be a single mother. And I'm talking about, ghetto type single mothers, not people who are widowed, nothing like that. So hopefully people understand what it is that I'm talking about, okay? But kind of, I'm talking about people who grew up in the areas that I grew up in the hood, grew up in poor inner city areas, right? They all kind of have like this similar way of just operating, and how they respond. How they respond is very similar, I would say. And I tend to see it, I tend to spot it easily. And there's even things that I'm like, there's times where I might hear somebody and be like, no, I didn't grow up with a single mother. No, my father was in my life for this part of my life. And I'm like, I kind of give them the side eye, and I'm like, your responses are telling me the opposite. Like, I don't believe it. I think that you, for the most part, even if you didn't grow, even if you had your father in your life, you were still with your mother more. There's just something about your energy and something about the way that you're responding that I'm like, that's some single mother energy right there. That is some single mother energy right there. And I can just tell by the way that you're responding to me, and just how, how you are. And this even goes for, it's not even just, this is not even just aimed at guys who grew up with single mothers. This is also women. I can even tell when women grew up with single mothers, how their responses are or whatever. Yeah, and it tends to be, of course, people who grew up with both parents in their household tend to be the most balanced. Now, I did still have my mother in my life, but I feel like she wasn't there to the extent that we needed her to be there, and how could she be, right? Because if physically we're living, most of our time we were with our dad, then how could she necessarily be there, right? And give the energy that she was supposed to give. But even when we were around her, there was a distance there. There was a really big distance there. And there still is. Again, it's not that we don't get along with our mother, because we do. But it's just not... It's not what I've seen growing up when I would see girls and guys being so close to their mother, and I'd be like, man, I wish I had that. And then they would wish they had what I had, because I had my dad in my life and they didn't. So guess basically what this video is saying is, for anyone who, if there's guys out there who are choosing or want to choose to be a single parent, and you want to have sole custody of your kids, just try to be mindful of them having, I would hope that even if you are going to be a single father, that you're going to have them have a good, someone that's going to have a good, positive mother role towards your kids, because they're going to need that. And you don't want them to have older siblings that feel like they have to take the place of their mother, and they have to grow up really quick. Yeah, so you need that balance. You definitely need that balance. But I will say, if your children are living in a toxic situation with their mother, get them out of that situation. Get them out. If you don't get them out, they will resent you. Promise. I promise. And this is really referring to, like, if you know their situation is a toxic situation with their mother and you're not doing enough about it, they're going to resent you. I swear to God they will. I know that might sound harsh or whatever, but you have to do what you have to do. And as someone who lived through the time that I did, and I saw how much fighting there was and what my dad had to go through to get custody of us, if there's guys out here that are saying, oh, this woman is preventing me from seeing my kids, you're full of shit. That means you really don't want to see your kids. I'm sorry. I don't buy it. I don't buy it one bit. Not from the time that I came from, not from the era I came from, not from seeing how much we had to... There was an ugly fight. It was an ugly fight in the courts. But you got to be willing to put everything on the line if you want your kids to be out of a situation or if you want your kids to live with you. And if you're not willing to do that, then I don't want to hear it. You know, like, I don't want to hear this whole she prevented me. No, nobody's preventing you from anything. Unless she, every time you come to her house and she has like a gun to your head or a gun to your kid's head, I don't want to hear it. No. That means you're not fighting enough. Point blank period. You're not fighting enough. You got to put everything on the line. Even if you might even have to put your job on the line for the time being. If that's what you want, and if you're really concerned about your children's safety, then that's what you're going to have to do. So, and you got to be ready and willing to do that. So, I don't know. I think that's about it. I feel like I've been talking for so much, and this freaking piece of hair is driving me crazy. It's driving me nuts. You know who I got my fashion sense from? Not from my mother, from my dad. My mother would be... Damn, this is gonna sound so terrible. But my mother would be like one of those ladies that would like buy things from like the cheapy type stores, you know, like from the rainbow shops, from, you know, people who live in the inner city, you know what I'm talking about. City, there used to be a store that was like real cheapy, and for some reason I forgot. Conway, my mother loved Conway. So all that's like that type of stuff. Like my dad, on the other hand, is like, you know, that shit looks cheap. That's cheap. That looks cheap. So I feel like I got my fashion sense from my dad. It's hilarious. Like, my dad's always the type to be like, that looks cheap. That looks cheap, and it's true, you know. And I feel like I got that from him. And then it's like, if I grow up with, you know, halfway. I wouldn't even say I have expensive, because I fine, I have expensive taste, but that doesn't mean that I buy expensive things like that. But, you know, like, even within cheap stores, like, you can find things. I'm getting into so much bullshit. This has nothing to do with anything that I'm talking about. But point is like, even like in cheapy stores, as a woman, you can, if you look for the right things and a decent color, you can kind of get away with things, even if they're cheap, if it fits properly, or if it fits halfway decent, or if you alter the way things fit. You can get away with it. But like, my mom is just like, nah. Like, if my mom was young, like, she'd be all into Fashion Nova right now. My mother would be all over Fashion Nova. Fashion Nova would be my mother's shit if my mother was a young person right now during these times. So, alright, this has nothing to do with anything, so I think I'm gonna go for now. I hope that this was entertaining. If people like these types of videos where I'm like talking about like my life and shit like that, like, if you even care, like, you know, I'm sure I'm probably gonna lose subscribers after this shit, but you know, if you like videos like this, I'll do more videos like this. If not, I won't do more videos like this, because I know my channel doesn't have really much to do with this. But at the very same time, I feel like it doesn't and it does. Because it's like, as someone who is Latin, who kind of grew up in a certain environment, I'm kind of exposing some of the, you know, the ugly, dirty things that go on within our community that people don't like to talk about. I could also get into a video of talking about how it is to grow up around people who have substance abuse issues. Yeah. So that was my life, you know. I made it out okay, sort of in one piece, sort of, you know, but it is what it is, and I'm here. And like I said, I guess this was just God's way of me having to live a certain life experience to live the life that I'm living now, and to see the importance of what it is to have both parents in your children's life. So, anyhow, I'm gonna go for now, and I guess I'll see you all in my next video. Take it easy, guys.